Somewhere out there, there may be a second version of you, an imposter.
You're wearing red because you're the imposter.
Yes. It sounds crazy, it's easy to laugh off until you hear what happened to Gary Sudbrink. In February of 1993, a robotic voice called Gary's parents' house on Long Island.
I'll tell you who it is. Yeah.
The calls came 4 times over 2 nights, and the voice on the end of the line told him plainly, "You are being impersonated. There is another one of you." That sounds crazy. That sounds really scary. It also sounds completely made up. The problem is there was evidence, and that makes it a lot more complicated. A double of Gary at this point had already shown up to his brother's wedding, and a voice that sounded exactly like Gary had already called his friends, pretending to be Gary, announcing a trip before Gary had even decided to make the trip that he announced to his friends. Apparently, his imposter did it. And that's what we're talking about today on the NSPO, the Nonstop PsyOp podcast. Press the like button, leave some suggestions on what you want to see us cover in the next one. Gary was an Air Force captain, a pharmacist, and a very private guy who never asked for any of this nonsense. The calls that were made back in the 90s were recorded. They still exist. We've put them in the video already. So there's only one real question, I suppose. Who was the voice? What was the voice? Was it Gary? Was it right? Were there actually 2 Garys? So, who is Gary Sudbrink really? Honestly, there's not a lot available in terms of public information. He was born in the mid-60s, Long Island family, thick New York accents, middle of 3 boys. He was the captain and pharmacist. The captain and pharmacist part is by his own account, and what's documented is that after the service, he was licensed and moved out west and pretty much vanished into a quiet life. So that's all we'll dig in there. I want to leave the man alone. This is a very famous internet story, though, that I'm going to be talking about, so I apologize if he hates that. I'll take the video down if you want, Gary. This whole story really surfaced because it started making the rounds on Reddit a few years back, and it's blown up again and again in just the last few years. And the first weird thing didn't even happen to Gary. It happened to his brother, Steven, on Steven's wedding day in 1992. Steven was driving to the wedding, and a car comes up fast behind him. He immediately recognizes it. He says, "It's Gary!" It's Gary's car. It pulls alongside, he looks over, and lo and behold, there's Gary making these distorted, goofy, almost disturbing faces at him. That's very creepy. Steven tries to roll the window down. There's no response from Gary. He just speeds off. Yo. Steven figures it's his brother being a goofball on his wedding day and lets it go. Until the reception. Steven finally goes up to Gary and asks him about what the happened earlier on the road. And Gary's like, "Huh? I didn't drive in. Why would I drive in? I'm Gary. I flew in this morning, man. I'm Gary." But Steven still swears he saw him in his car. So Gary excuses himself, calls his landlady back in San Antonio, and she confirms it. Gary's car is sitting in the lot in San Antonio. The wedding is here, and Gary's car is here. Not possible. It never moved. Everybody chalks it up to the old classic wedding day jitters. Steven's full of shit, he's crazy, he made it up. Let's all stand in a circle around him and beat him. Now, to be clear, the Sudbrinks are a UFO family. Like my family, like many of your families out there. Gary's dad and his uncle have been deep, balls deep in UFOs since the 1960s, often taking trips out to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the Mothman Town, and the wave of UFO and creature sightings that John Keel wrote about in his famous book, The Mothman Prophecies. And not long before all this started to unfold, the older Sudbrinks took another trip to West Virginia and come back saying that they saw a UFO, by their telling, hovering over a power plant, which there's a very interesting dynamic between UFOs and power plants and nuclear energy and all this type of stuff. Get this thing out of here, man. I'm just kidding. My wife got this for me on Etsy, so I'm keeping it right here. She got that for me on Etsy. I was pretending, I moved it, I was gonna throw it and stuff. Look, Sour Boys. Go to sour.gg. Get some delicious sour gummies made with real fruit. Natural flavors, natural dyes. So they saw a UFO hovering over a power plant, which if you were in the world It makes sense. The UFO lore, like I said, says sightings cluster around nuclear sites, power plants, so on and so forth. Some of the early contactees, the people who claimed they actually talked to these things, said the beings were fixated on one idea, and that is we'd split the atom and now we'd either use it to reach the stars or destroy ourselves. So, we're kind of making that decision consistently every single day, it seems now. But either way, Sudbrink family, these ideas, think about them. They're gonna matter a lot very soon. Now let's jump forward to February 1993, the trip that started everything for Gary. All right, Gary got the first 3 days of the month off and he decided to slip home to Long Island. Only one problem. He's not supposed to. He's supposed to tell his superiors before he leaves base. You can't leave. You're basically an indentured servant when you're in the military, pretty much. So for Gary, the trip is off the books. If the wrong person finds out he's gone, he's in a lot of trouble. But he figures, hey man, if I go a few days and I walk around and I, pull on it or whatever, nobody will notice. So he's packing up to leave, looks out back, and there's a helicopter just hovering, maybe 20 feet off the ground, pointed right at his place. Gary needs glasses, so he goes to grab them. By the time he's back to actually get a look at the helicopter, it's like it notices him and climbs and books it out of there. After this, it gets even stranger. He's at the airport waiting to board, and a thin guy in an overcoat, a horrifying sentence, walks up and starts chatting. Where you headed, Gary? Polite stuff. Gary says, I'm going home to New York to see my family. Then the guy wants his name. What's your name? Gary looks down and the guy's got a notebook and he's writing the answers to his questions down. So Gary gives him a first name. The man pushes for the full name. Gary gets a little bit uncomfortable, a little uneasy, and he's suddenly very glad that his bag strap is covering the last name on his uniform. And he asks, what's this for? Oh, I'm actually doing a survey, starting a little local business, talking to everyone at the airport. I'm starting a business, instead of big and tall, it's called thin and small. But he didn't talk to anybody else. This guy didn't talk to anyone else. He walked in, made a beeline straight for Gary. Gary pushed back, why do you need my full name? And the guy goes, don't worry, you're not gonna get in any trouble, which is scary, because Gary's not supposed to be there. But either way, his row gets called and he escapes onto the plane. Gary's off like a damn rocket. And yeah, you could just walk up to a gate back then, no ticket, no security, to just get to the terminal, guys. Pre 9/11, baby. Come on now. You, Osama! And George Bush. Gary sits down, he's relieved, and another guy sits next to him with long hair, glasses. They have some friendly, normal, small talk this time, nothing weird and pushy, no census being taken, until somebody shows up and says, that's my seat. So the long-haired guy moves across the aisle, keeps the conversation going, but it gets a little pointed. When is Gary going back to Texas? How does he spell his last name? Where exactly is he headed? Stuff a stranger has absolutely zero reason to want. A flight attendant tells him to get to his actual seat. He lingers by the emergency exit asking for more and finally gets parked in the back of the plane. Gary doesn't see him ever again. So Gary lands, he's very freaked out and calls his landlady to keep an eye on his apartment because things are getting very strange. Then he gets to his parents' place and tells them everything about the helicopter, the two men, and his dad goes, that's funny, son. There was a helicopter hovering over our house today as well. So Gary decides to call his old friend Mike. Mike answers, surprised. He says, you sound a lot better than the last time we talked. Gary has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. He hasn't talked to Mike in ages. And Mike says, you called me 20 minutes ago. Said you were gonna be in town. But Gary did not call. Gary did not decide to make this trip until basically the moment he made it. Nobody knew he was coming, and Mike is adamant and said, yeah, you called. You sounded congested, kind of staticky, like you had a cold. But it was you, Gary. I mean, I heard you, Gary. And the Gary on that call said he'd flown into a different airport than the one the real Gary actually landed at. So somebody knew Gary's movements, and somebody was out there being Gary at the wedding and now on the phone with Mike before Gary himself had even decided what he was doing. This shit is creepy. I've got full-on goosebumps right now, dude. I think one of my biggest fears is being impostered, all right? Imagine getting impostered and then your imposter sleeps with your wife. God, that would be a nightmare. Be kind of sick though if he showed up for work for me. or like went to jury duty or some shit like that. There is dope times in which having an imposter would be really cool. February 8th, 1993, 10:30 at night. The phone rings at the Sudbrink house. Gary picks up, he hears, Gary realizes it's nonsensical, so he hangs up. It rings right back, but this time he hits record on the answering machine. The voice asks for Gary. It mispronounces the name. It says, Gary Sudbrink. It's slow, robotic, dragging, odd.
Is Gary Sudbrink there?
Yeah, who's this, Steven? Are you playing games with me or what?
Gary's first reaction is not fear, it's annoyance, because he's sure it's his brother Steven messing with him. My name's Gary Sudbrink. Gary says, I'm gonna kick your ass. And the voice just keeps on going.
Steven, if you're playing games, I'm gonna kick your ass.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
Huh?
Strange phrasing, weird phrasing over and over. And then it tells him the thing.
You're being impersonated by the other voice.
Yeah, this is you, Steven, you idiot. You're pissing me off.
It's really creepy. The creepiest part is the family. Mom picks up the other line and goes,
Watch this ad.
This message is sponsored by ZocDoc. I'll research the best magnesium for sleep,
Glycinate.
the best protein for recovery,
Whey.
and the best way to breathe.
In.
But when it comes to seeing an actual medical professional, suddenly I am too busy, which is why I finally started using ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you book and find high-quality in-network doctors so you can find someone you love. Over 150,000 providers across all 50 states, 200 plus specialties, primary care, eye care. You can search by specialty or symptom and do an in-person visit or a video call and read thousands of verified patient reviews. And when you're ready, you just pull up the real-time availability, pick a slot, and book instantly. No calling around, no waiting, no,
Is this normal?
I use ZocDoc and it's very easy. It's one of the easiest parts of staying on top of my health now. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to zocdoc.com/Oompaville to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's zocdoc.com, ZocDoc.com/Oompaville. They start bickering about whether Steven could be calling from Queens. Does Queens even count as an out of area? I don't even know. I don't know a lot about phones because Gary checks the caller ID, which barely anyone had in 1993, and it says out of area.
One new call out of area. Is Steven out of the calling area or what?
Oh, I know.
What do you mean you don't know? He's in Queens. Who are you talking? I don't know who the fuck.
So it's untraceable. The line is dark. Dad grabs the phone with his incredible sense of humor and asks if the voice is an intergalactic person.
Are you an intergalactic person? Are you a space alien? Sounds like he hung up.
Which is the politically correct way to say alien. Gary asks if it's a space alien. The whole family's on different lines in the house, arguing with each other over this strange droning voice at the exact same time. It's very funny, in all honesty, but it's also creepy and very eerie. That word, eerie, is designed to be used in situations like this. Eerie situations. 40 minutes later, 11:10, it calls back. This time, Gary's ready. He hits record and tries to actually talk to it. He asks it what it wants, and the voice asks if he's back from Texas yet. It's only been 40 minutes. He drags out the S's in Texas. It's extremely creepy that it interrupts him with the line that is, even more creepier.
Okay, I'll be back. Excuse me? I can't hear too well.
Dad's in the background saying, "It is a full moon tonight." The voice warns him again, "There's a double of you." And then it just dissolves into static.
I'm hearing static.
Tell him I like to talk.
He hung up.
Very strange. Third call, 11:38. This one's different. The voice sounds tired. Half of it is unintelligible.
Who is this? Is Gary Sudbrink here? Are you back from Texas? How are you? How long are you?
Like it cannot finish its own sentence.
Hello, can I help you?
Hello,
Yes.
is Gary Sudbrink.
Yes, that's me.
And the dad is the one who finally calls it as being something very bizarre. This is not Steven. Steven would have cracked Stephen wouldn't have called 3 times in a row, dragging it out, beating the dead horse. That's not the type of game that Stevie plays. Then the voice signs off the same way. And that's the end of night 1. Now, nobody in the family has actually seen a UFO except for the dad and the uncle. Gary has never seen a UFO, or at least there's no information of that. Nothing's ever really happened to Gary, but every single call is about Gary and they want to know about Gary. Maybe it's because he just walked off base without telling anyone and he went AWOL. Off base, no authorization, the aliens will bring him back. But why him though? Then comes night 2, February 9th, 10:21 p.m. One more call. This one's got more echo, more reverb, like it's coming from a bathroom, maybe in a spaceship. Gary asks it straight.
Can I ask why you're... Yes, can I ask why you're calling?
The voice gives him the closest thing to an answer in an actual response that it ever gives. Gary says he'd like to see it.
I have to think about that. I'd like to see you.
And then the uncle jumps in.
Hey, let me tell you something. I've been listening to you, and I've had contacts with you.
And the instant the uncle says that, the voice snaps to a warning. And then there's something garbled about the sun rising on the dark side of the moon. And then lo, the same warning one more time, it'll show the double from you. And the call just ends with the 3 of them confirming that they got it all recorded. I'm an adult man with a partially functioning brain. This could be fake, and the most obvious case for the fake is the simplest one. It sounds like a recording. If it is a recording, a lot of things make a lot of sense. The same phrases over and over with the exact same inflection, slowed down cadence, pitched down tone, the fact that it doesn't really sound like a humanoid. People also point to a whirring on the calls, like a tape recorder hitting fast forward and rewind to cue up the next answer to play on the phone, something like that. That could explain the static as well, the pauses. It's weirdly fast, back-to-back repeats. Obviously cannot refute any of that with the partially functioning portion of my brain. It really might just be a recording. Earliest debunk was that Gary used a Talkboy, which is the toy recorder from Home Alone 2, which was everywhere in 1992. Kid records himself, slows it down, fakes the alien. Only problem with that is the Talkboy that could actually change a voice, the deluxe one with the speed dial, it didn't ship until April of 1993. Calls came in February. Boom! I just scared all my dogs a lot. So the one feature in the Talkboy that would have made it work did not exist yet, unless you got one of them bitches on pre-order. And for what it's worth, Gary flat out denies a Talkboy. He doesn't deny that it could have been some kind of recording. He says that it just wasn't the Talkboy specifically. But the deeper problem with debunking this is the audio itself. If we think about the chain this sound went through, if it's a recording played through a microphone into a landline receiver, captured on an answering machine cassette, later burned to a CD, then digitized into the file that you hear today. Now, so each one of those steps bleeds some level of quality. The skeptics over at Metabunk, a forum that exists to pick paranormal nonsense apart, they tried, and they pretty much hit a wall. Nobody knows how much the tape was slowed down in the first place, so nobody knows the right speed to bring it back to. You can't cleanly compare it to, let's say, Gary's real voice. But that didn't stop people, obviously, from trying. A YouTuber named Pandox sped the voice back up to a normal human cadence and pitched it up, and it doesn't really sound like Gary to me.
To investigate this claim, the following audio of call 1 has been manipulated to increase the playback speed.
Steven, if you're playing games, they're gonna kick your ass.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
He ran the words both voices say through an analysis and got something like a 30% match, which is pretty low enough that he argued it's probably not Gary. But that's a hobbyist, not a forensics lab, to be fair. But it still points away from it being a Gary faked it hoax. Now, one thing that should bug you, Gary didn't tell the story for 13 years. Not until November 2006 when he handed a CD to a MUFON investigator named Sue Swiatek. This was at a MUFON event, and MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, is the big UFO network, the largest civilian UFO group in the country. Lanyards, polo shirts, pay your dues, go hunt UFOs, walk around pulling on it. and all that. And it comes out at this event that Gary's family belonged to the smaller regional cousin, UFON, the Long Island UFO network. So Gary loves it. But strange, Gary doesn't even tell his own story. Sue tells it for him. She plays the CD for the room. Turns out she already knew of Gary's dad. He was kind of a legacy name in the UFO world. Gary's father and uncle helped investigate the South Haven Park crash, which was an object that allegedly came down in Suffolk County Park on November 24th, 1992, the same year as the wedding, and the family supposedly had VHS footage from that investigation. Very interesting. By the way, good luck finding any solid info on South Haven. It's difficult. It doesn't help that half of everybody misspells it as two words, South Haven, but the bits that survive are pretty wild. There's a guy on Reddit claiming he was a local PD stationed at the park who says once the thing came down, men in suits, FBI, CIA, he doesn't know, but they all showed up and they cleared everyone out of the park. There's also a 4chan thread with screenshots of the footage that's since vanished. Fox even aired some of it on a show called Encounters back in '94. But the reason why the crash matters to Gary, the people who investigated it started getting harassed the same way that Gary did. Take the network's vice president, Stephen Lavarone. No relation to Gary's brother, just a burly, big old hairy electrical contract muff. Come on now. According to a 1998 Washington Post profile, ever since the South Haven crash, he believed he was being watched. Phones tapped, house under surveillance, people looking into the windows like this, kind of doing one of these right here. And how about this? He said computer-altered voices were leaving menacing messages on his answering machines. We don't have his recordings, but two men, UFO network, same corner of Long Island, both kind of targeted in this similar, same sort of way. Then there's the man who ran the network, President John Ford. In 1996, Ford was arrested and charged with plotting to murder 3 Suffolk County politicians. Prosecutors said he wanted to poison them with radioactive material because he was convinced that they were covering up the South Haven crash. The case painted a man who'd spiraled and was convinced that communists were coming for upstate New York. Guess what, bud? They're there! 2 other men were charged, pleaded out, and testified against him, and I want to be very clear because it very much matters. Ford was never convicted. He was found too delusional to stand trial and held from 1997 to 2019 at a maximum security psychiatric hospital, which is a tragedy. Then he was moved to a less restrictive one where he still is, and to this day, he says that he was framed. That's the world that all this lives in. That's the world that Gary's living in. So back to the only question that matters, what the f is the point? If it's a prank, who did it? Dad already ruled out Stephen back during the calls. Stephen would never have kept a straight face through 3 of them in one night. Could have been the old friend Mike. Could have been Brian, the younger brother. He's a rascal. He's the youngest. We don't really know anything about him, so I'm not sure. Either way, whoever did it knew the family was into UFOs and somehow made every call come up out of area. So if it's aliens, you know, that makes sense. They're always out of area, guys. But a prank doesn't explain the rest. Who were the 2 men at the airport, the one with the notebook who only talked to Gary, the one who switched seats to keep grilling him about how he spells his name and when he's going back to Texas. What the f do they have to do with anything? That's what makes it all really strange. But the strangest thread in this whole nest is the one the voice itself warned about, the impersonator, the double at the wedding, the Gary, who called Mike before Gary had even decided to travel. So either Gary fabricated those pieces to dress up the calls, or somebody out there was being Gary. And listening to how genuinely rattled and annoyed Gary sounds on the recordings, I feel for Gary. Gary could be a victim of something here, not necessarily the author of something. So was he being warned? Was he being intimidated the way that Lavarone was because of what his family was tangled up in, the South Haven stuff, or what? After the calls, Gary went quiet. He's done one real sit down on a podcast called Mysterious Brews, plus a handful of random convention appearances. He has a really bizarre YouTube channel, Abandoned Places out in Nevada. He's got a clip titled My Harem, which is kind of epic. He's mostly stepped back now, stays out of the scene, but every time he tells the story, it stays very consistent. The most unsettling read of all of this is that maybe Gary was left alone because he stayed quiet. His dad and uncle never really went public about South Haven. They didn't release the tapes. They didn't leak that shit. Gary sat on his own tapes for 13 years. Maybe that brought him some peace, or maybe he's still a little scared that somewhere out there is the other Gary, the person that his brother saw on the way to the wedding, the person on the phone with Mike, the person who told him to beware. Whether or not that person, that voice, was a recording or a prank, or maybe even a man in black come to keep him quiet, there still might be 2 Garys. And there still might be 2 of you. Thanks for watching this episode of the Nonstop PSYOP Podcast. Leave suggestions down below. See you guys in the next episode.